Welcome back, everyone. On this channel, I use AI to break down complex topics like politics with no bias or emotion. No long intro today, we're going to get straight to the point. I'm going to ask ChatGPT to go over the actions that Donald Trump promised to take on day one of his presidency and see if he actually kept them or if he broke them. That's the concept of the plan for today's video, and we'll get to that in a moment. But before we begin, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to the channel right now if you haven't yet. I know it's not ideal to ask you before you've watched the entire video, but I'm doing it now because it's really easy to forget to do it later. Just keep in mind, it's super important to me and it helps to keep the content coming. So go on, do it now or at any point while you're watching. Thanks in advance, and let's get right into it. And here we are. Now, since we need up-to-date information, I'll have it gather up all the latest news, and once that's done, I'll jump in with the first question. Alright, let's get started. As you might have guessed, I'm asking it to be clear and straightforward and unbiased, call it as it is with no sugarcoating and all of that. We'll break down Trump's promises one by one, so I'm just asking it to start with a random one. Alright, ChatGPT's ready, I'm ready, you're ready, and here we go. Trump promised to end the Russia-Ukraine war in 24 hours. That hasn't happened, and it was never realistic. Ukraine is open to peace if their sovereignty is respected, but Putin's goal is to erase Ukraine's independence entirely. You can't negotiate a lasting solution with someone like that. Strength is the only answer. Recently, Trump has been pushing for OPEC to lower oil prices, believing that reducing Russia's oil revenue will force Putin to negotiate. However, this approach oversimplifies the situation. Putin's ambitions go beyond economic gain. He's driven by a desire for regional dominance. Lowering oil prices might squeeze Russia's finances, but it's unlikely to change Putin's strategic goals. The idea that Trump could sit down with Putin, tell him he's doing bad things, and Putin would just end the war is naive at best. Putin isn't going to back down from his ambitions because of a chat. He wants domination, not compromise. Any deal with him would be a short-term sham, not a path to real peace. This promise was broken, plain and simple, and honestly, it was obvious from the first day Trump made it. The truth is, the only person who can stop this war immediately is Putin himself, and he has no intention of doing so. Trump's promise was pure campaign rhetoric. Ending a war this complex in one day is fantasy, and reality has made that painfully obvious. Yeah, I mean, did anyone even believe this promise? I mean, come on. First he said he would end the war 24 hours after being elected, and then it was 24 hours after inauguration, and then the funniest part where a journalist asked him why the war was still going on, he actually said,
I have another half a day left. We'll see. We want to get it done.
Now tell me, do you think a deal is even possible right now? Trump says he's ready, Zelensky says he's ready, and even Putin says he's ready, yet somehow no one takes the next step. Alright, promise broken, got it. Without further ado, let's move on to the next one. Trump promised to launch the largest deportation operation in U.S. history on day one. He did sign executive orders directing ICE to ramp up arrests and removals, and reports show that deportation efforts have increased. ICE has been conducting more raids, focusing on individuals with criminal records and those in sanctuary cities. Military aircraft are even being used to speed up deportation flights, so yes, the crackdown has begun. But let's be real, calling this the largest deportation operation is a stretch. Deportations take time. There are legal challenges, logistical barriers, and capacity limits. Rounding up and deporting millions of people isn't something that happens overnight. The reality is, while Trump has certainly taken action, the scale of this operation is nowhere near what he made it sound like during the campaign. If his promise was simply to begin mass deportations, then yes, he delivered. But if we're judging whether this is truly the biggest deportation push in history, that's still up for debate. The system isn't built to move that fast, so partially fulfilled. He started it, but it's nowhere near the scale he hyped it up to be. Time will tell if he actually follows through. Partially fulfilled. Okay, this is actually the most noticeable of his actions right now. And by the way, here's an entire video about mass deportation and its impact on the economy. ChatGPT broke it down pretty well, so be sure to check it out if you missed it. Alright, let's ask for the next one, and here it is. Trump promised to close the border on day one, and while he's definitely cracked down hard, the border is still functioning. He deployed 1,500 troops, reinstated the Remain in Mexico policy, and signed an executive order limiting asylum claims. Illegal crossings have reportedly dropped from thousands per day to under 600. That's a huge shift. But has he actually shut the border down? No. Even if you take close the border as a general promise to make illegal crossings far more difficult, it's still not airtight. Some migrants are still entering, asylum claims are still being processed, and the border itself is still operating for legal trade, travel, and immigration. That was always going to be the case. Completely sealing it off was never realistic, and even Trump knows that. That said, the drop in illegal crossings is undeniable. He's made serious moves to tighten security, and it's working. So is the promise fully broken? No. But is the border closed in the way Trump made it sound? Also no. The fairest assessment? Partially fulfilled. He delivered on tougher restrictions, but the border is still open, just more controlled than before. Again, partially fulfilled. And by the way, it looks like GPT acknowledged that the drop is huge, and it's working, at least partly. Alright, let's move on to the next one. Trump promised to end birthright citizenship on day one. He signed an executive order attempting to strip citizenship from children born in the US to non-citizen parents. But here's the reality. This is blatantly unconstitutional. The 14th Amendment guarantees citizenship to all persons born or naturalized in the United States. This has been settled law for over a century, and no executive order can override the Constitution. As expected, a federal judge immediately blocked Trump's order, calling it a clear violation of constitutional rights. Lawsuits are piling up, and this attempt to rewrite American law is dead on arrival. Even if Trump pushes it further, it's almost certain to be struck down in higher courts. The only way to change birthright citizenship is through a constitutional amendment, which would require 2/3 of Congress and ratification by 38 states, something that simply won't happen. Trump knew this promise wasn't realistically achievable, but he made it anyway. The executive order was more of a political stunt than a real policy shift. Bottom line, birthright citizenship is still the law of the land, and Trump's promise is completely broken. There was no legal path for him to fulfill it, and now that's been proven. Alright, the promise is completely broken. I don't get what's wrong with birthright citizenship. Is it really a problem? Let me know your thoughts about it all in the comments down below. Now, let's move on to the next promise. Trump promised to pardon January 6 prisoners, and he wasted no time delivering. On day one, he issued a sweeping pardon for over 1,500 people connected to the Capitol riots, including those convicted of assaulting police officers. This move wasn't just about helping nonviolent offenders, it covered people who played active roles in the chaos of that day. Legally, he had every right to do it, but politically and ethically, it's a disaster. Pardoning individuals who attack democracy itself sends a clear message. If you fight for Trump, the rules don't apply to you. Experts are already warning that this sets a dangerous precedent, essentially legitimizing political violence. If you storm the Capitol for the right reasons, you might just get a free pass. Supporters argue that these were political prisoners, victims of an unfair justice system, but that ignores reality. Many of these people weren't just protesters, they were part of an outright attack on the government. The bottom line? Promise fulfilled. Trump pardoned the rioters just like he said he would. Whether that's a win for justice or a green light for future chaos is a different question entirely. But the damage is already done. Well, surprise, surprise, that promise is fulfilled. By the way, I already have a video where ChatGPT breaks down Trump's executive orders, including this one. Just a quick reminder, it's already up on the channel, so you can check it out anytime. Alright, here's the next promise. Trump promised to roll back gender-affirming policies, and on day one, he signed an executive order mandating that all federal agencies recognize only two sexes, male and female, as determined at birth. This means no more self-identification on government documents, no federal funding for gender-affirming care, and restrictions on transgender individuals accessing facilities that match their gender identity. Legally, he followed through. This effectively undoes years of policies that allowed for gender self-identification in federal records and transgender-inclusive protections. But here's the problem. This kind of blanket policy doesn't account for biological complexities like intersex individuals or people who've undergone medical transition. It's not as simple as just biology. The policy also has bizarre side effects. Some critics have pointed out that since all fetuses start with undifferentiated genitalia, this could technically make Trump the first female president. Obviously, that's not how law works, but it shows how messy rigid definitions can get. Bottom line, promise fulfilled. Trump has legally enforced a binary definition of sex at the federal level. Whether that clarifies things or just creates more confusion depends on who you ask, but there's no doubt he delivered on this one. Well, all jokes aside, what's your opinion? Let me know in the comments down below. And since we've got a couple more promises left, here's a quick reminder. If you're enjoying this conversation with ChatGPT, all you have to do is leave a like and subscribe to the channel right now while you're watching. It only takes a couple seconds, and I'd really appreciate it because it helps the channel to grow and allows me to keep publishing new videos every single week. Thanks again, and now let's move on to the next Donald Trump promise. Alright, back to the chat, and the next promise is... Trump promised to ban transgender people from the military, and he delivered. He signed an executive order barring transgender individuals from serving, reversing previous policies that allowed them to serve openly. He framed it as a move to improve military readiness and unit cohesion, but let's be honest, this is a political move, not a military necessity. The reality is, studies, including those from the Rand Corporation, have shown that allowing transgender individuals to serve has little to no impact on effectiveness or costs. Thousands of transgender troops have already served without issue. This ban isn't about making the military stronger, it's about pushing a culture war agenda. Legally, this is already being challenged. LGBTQ+ groups are suing, arguing that it's unconstitutional and discriminatory. And they have a case. The courts blocked Trump's similar ban last time before it was later reinstated under restrictions. Bottom line, promise fulfilled. Transgender individuals are now banned from serving in the military. Whether this holds up in court is another story, but for now, Trump did exactly what he said he would. Whether that makes America stronger or just more divided is a question people will keep debating. This is one that certainly has a lot of people split down the middle online, but what do you think? Let me know your thoughts about this topic in the comments down below. And now I think we should ask about the last one for today, and here's the answer. Trump promised to cut federal funding for schools that teach critical race theory, or CRT, or enforce vaccine mandates. On day one, he signed an executive order to do just that, directing federal agencies to withhold funds from schools promoting what he calls radical left-wing indoctrination. But here's the catch. Education funding is largely controlled at the state and local level. The federal government doesn't have unlimited power to dictate school curricula, which means this order is mostly symbolic. Even if it does have some impact, it's almost certainly going to be challenged in court. Cutting funding based on curriculum content raises serious First Amendment concerns, and targeting vaccine mandates could run into legal battles over public health policy. In short, this isn't as simple as signing a paper and making it happen. If the goal was to send a political message, Trump succeeded, but if we're talking about actual enforcement, that's far from certain. For now, this promise is technically in motion, but whether it holds up legally or has any real effects remains to be seen. So, partially fulfilled, Trump took action, but the outcome is still up in the air. And that's it. It turns out that Trump actually broke fewer promises than he fulfilled, but honestly, wouldn't it have been better if he would have made promises that actually made a difference in a positive way? Be sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. And right after that, you should click on this video to see ChatGPT's take on mass deportation and its impact on the economy, because believe me, it is worth your attention. Thanks for watching, click on this video, and I'll be waiting for you there.